Something's been nagging at my mind for the longest time about this answer to what makes a woman happy. And I keep hearing this phrase being tossed around time and time again about, well, if women were back in the home being a trad wife, they would be happy and fulfilled, taking care of children, etc., etc. But when I really think about it, this to me doesn't seem like the proper answer. And I'll tell you why. What does it mean to be a trad wife? It's a term that has been tossed around a lot lately as the answer to what would make a woman happy. But looking back into history, is this really the case? First, you have to parse out what is actually traditional. Many people focus on a sliver of humanity, the golden years for women, where a family could afford a beautiful life on one income and the father took the role of sole provider. The mother stayed in the role of homemaker and continued to devote her life to the care and home of her family. However, modernity allowed her endless free time as technology took the roles of women and made them easier, hoping that an easy time would mean happiness. Modern washing machines for laundry made it passive. Dishes, you just loaded into the washer. Food production became readily available and instant. Why grow, tend, and slaughter your own food daily for meals when all you had to do was hop in the Chrysler once a week because the glory of refrigeration? Make clothes for your family? Never, when clothing was readily available, now fashionable and easy to procure. Educating your children about life? No. Send them off to schools for them to learn. Send them off to clubs and organizations and events that will teach them how to sew, cook, hunt, start a fire. Everything the family used to teach at home. A woman's purpose in society was stripped of that which brings pride and satisfaction. Everything that made a mother had been institutionalized, streamlined, and the true hard work had been removed. That hard work is what makes a human feel alive, thankful, and full of purpose, man or woman. At this time, women started to use medications to quell the nagging desire for meaning, that biological and spiritual need to provide for her family in her own traditional way. No wonder in the 60s the women's revolution took root. Women were yearning for that feeling of having value, that need for purpose that modern life had stripped away. Of course, their eyes were turned to the lives of men, as they still had retained some sense of purpose as provider in this new modern world. They were misguided and misinformed that they could be happy. They either could be as good as men or they didn't need men. They could do it all themselves, forgetting the power and the honor that women already had. Of course, they were told that these things that would actually make them happy were useless and looked down upon. Next, the messaging stripped them of the one last thing that brings a woman life: motherhood. They were taught children were a burden, taught the difficult job of raising children was too much. To live childless and free was the only way to true happiness. They were worth more if they only took on the lives of men, then they'd be happy. But this is the biggest lie women were told. What makes men fulfilled and content is not what makes a woman happy and content with her own life. Generally, it never can. Just as what makes a woman happy won't create the best life for a man, generally. The next time you hear someone talking about traditional gender roles, remember a small sliver of history is never something to focus on. We have only lived in modernity for a few hundred years compared to the tens of thousands of years of evolution. Here's something to ponder. What are the traditional roles of each sex? Were they equally as valuable? Did they both use each sex's strengths to ensure our survival? Think of the villages of our ancestors. Did the women gather and chop wood? Of course they did. If the man was out hunting, how else was she going to keep the home warm for her babies and cook meals? Did women hunt and provide for her family? Sometimes she had to ensure the survival of even their whole village. Now, did the men play with his children, take time to educate them, teach them, and sometimes be gentle and loving with them? Of course he did. Even the toughest, most masculine and burly men are tender with a newborn child. In ancient times, there was no pink for girls and blue for boys. There was no men's jobs and women's job. It's just who was the most proficient in the role that needed to get done for survival. Our modern world has stripped us almost of everything that makes us human and filled us with too much time on our hands to create problems for ourselves. So, what is the solution for this? Listen to your inner wild woman. Listen to those voices in your gut that guides you to purpose. Get in touch with that woman in you that comes out when you turn off the TV, social media, and the endless droning of what you should be wanting. Get outside of modernity and discover what your true strengths are and build those. Take off those heavy and useless robes of every lie modernity has forced upon you. If the feminists were right, wouldn't we be happier and more fulfilled by now? After decades of this shit, you think it would be working by now, but women are more miserable than ever before. One of the most powerful tools a woman possesses is her intuition. Modernity needs you to ignore it. Never forget who you are. You are powerful. You are brave. And you're a woman. Hopefully, this gives you at least a little bit to think about as a modern woman, as a woman moving through life, as a woman who is looking for that sense of purpose outside, wanting someone to give it to you, wanting something to provide it for you, trying to find it somewhere else. Never forget, it's right in here. You know who you are. Why don't you just shut up and listen?